thank you, Robert, for being here. Robert Dilts is with us, and it's an interview for Global Coaching Magazine. So, Robert, what is your concept of coaching?
Well, I always like to start, as I started this program, as we said, the word coach comes from the name of a town in Hungary from the Middle Ages, and they became famous because they made coaches, what we call today a coach, which is a vehicle, right, a carriage that takes somebody from a present state to a desired state. So the word coach, even from its very beginning, means it's something that helps people to move from somewhere they are to somewhere that they want to go. And I think that is first and most basic definition of a coach. If somebody's in a present state, they want to go to a desired state. That means you have to create a path and then find what are the resources necessary to travel that path. And along the way, you will encounter certain types of obstacles, interferences, resistances, and those need to be met resourcefully and somehow dealt with so that you can complete the journey. And I think a coach does all of those things. Help the client say, where am I now? Where do I want to go? What's the path? What resources do I need? And when I encounter obstacles, what can I do to deal with them and move on?
Okay. In your experience, what is the success on coaching?
What is it when a coach is successful?
Yeah.
Coach is successful when they can help be the vehicle, create the vehicle for which the client can achieve their desired state. So, I think one of the reasons that NLP has become such a prominent tool and such a prominent part of coaching is that NLP from its beginning was also very outcome oriented. From the time that NLP started, from the time it got its name, 40 years ago, you always started by saying, what do you want? What is your outcome? NLP is well-formed outcomes. So the success of a coach is always going to be measured by the ability of the client to achieve desired outcomes on their own.
Okay.
Right? The idea of a coach, just like an athletic coach, is the athlete. Right? We say that the athlete has a good coach, not because the coach does something. The coach is helping the athlete to be able to be their best. So I think we can say that an executive coach does the same thing. You have certain outcomes, there's goals, but also the client is able to perform at their best.
Okay.
So I think those two things, getting a result, performing at your best.
Okay. Right now we have a lot of competence and a lot of schools of coaching.
Yeah.
One of them are maybe not efficient or not that efficient,
Yeah.
or some of them are. In your opinion, what is the business and the ethics in coaching?
Well, first of all, if you're a coach, your primary mission, your reason, your purpose, right, is to support somebody else, right? And I think the big thing about coaching is that when you are truly a coach, you're not just somebody who is doing techniques. In fact, the whole power of coaching is that I am fitting something to a particular individual. That's why if somebody started bringing statistics about methods of coaching, I would say, this is crazy. Because the whole idea of a coach is, if I'm coaching you, I'm coaching you, right? Not an average person, not a symptom, not a this. And so what I want to be able to do is to know how you uniquely work, what your goals So anything that I do is going to be tailored, we would say, adapted in a very personal way for you, in the way that you can benefit from it the most. So I think the first ethic of coaching is my primary commitment is to my client and what my client needs, not to my theory as the coach or my technique as a coach or my school as a coach. I think somebody who is trapped by a school of coaching is not really a coach in the truest sense, that as a coach, I'm gonna make a completely unique, adapted, process that will only work for you. Right? So because to me, when I talk to my coaching clients, I say, the best way is going to be your way. Right? It's the way that works for you, not for me, not for statistically whoever else. And that's what coaching is about. And I think coaching has emerged as a kind of a balance to this very sort of statistical, technique-oriented, where it's sort of like, you would say, one size fits everybody. And I see that, when I do coaching with people, like for example, my wife just the last 2 years ago went through a whole process of breast cancer. And the medical world is the opposite of the coaching world. In the medical world, I don't care about you at all. I don't know anything about you. There's a symptom, there's a statistical thing about this treatment. I do this treatment to fit the statistics. I don't know anything about you. I don't care about you. I'm just treating the symptom. It's not that that's bad. It's just that is a very limited approach. And what I'm saying is that coaching is the exact opposite. I care mostly, primarily about you, what you need, who you are, and how can I best adapt and serve you. So I would say that's the ethic, when we talk about the ethics of coaching, that's my commitment. Adapt what I do to support you in the most unique way that serves you.
Okay. Following what you're saying, the most important thing is your client. In your experience, and what is the future of coaching, and if you think which is the deadline, if it's going to be?
Well, in a certain way, coaching, I think there will always be coaching. I'm sure that if you think about it, if coaching is always about individual needs of people, then coaching will be evolving as people evolve. So the death of anything comes, the deadline of it comes when it stops evolving, right? When it rigidifies into a particular set of something, of either skills or tools, or approaches. Because then it's not keeping up with the evolution that in NLP for years, again, also since the beginning, I think that the real practitioners of NLP follow the rule of what's called the law of requisite variety, which is a technical term, but requisite variety means necessary flexibility, necessary choices. And what that law says is, if the more possibilities that there comes, in between different clients and different people, the more I have to expand my possibilities to be able to deal with all those situations. As soon as I say, this is it, it's only in this part, then everybody that doesn't come into that particular box will start being left out. So I think people, if you take the so-called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you start with survival, physical survival, then safety, then belonging, then self-esteem, then you finally get to self-actualization, where, and this is what coaching works for, right? I was talking about contrasting it to medicine earlier. Medicine only deals with the lowest level, physical needs. But when people are reaching this level, of optimum performance, you're getting into what's called the self-actualization, in which I experience myself as somebody unique. And then they say the final level is self-transcendence. Then I am contributing to something bigger than myself. And so I think that coaching as it is evolving, and coaching methods are evolving more towards this kind of movement towards self-actualization and transcendence. I mean, those are terms, but it's where people feel the sense, I am unique, right? There's nobody else like me. I am unique, and I serve a purpose. I make a difference to others. And I think this is what the part that coaching has really, focused on. I think as long as human beings are as long as we reach that level, right, then coaching is going to be very valuable. Now you go to, I was in Benin in West Africa earlier, and you don't find many coaches there because people are still essentially trying to get work on survival and safety, right? So on the other hand, as that economy grows and as they begin to become more successful, you've got to move beyond just the survival and safety. You've got to start moving into that sense of belonging. Actually, there's a sense of belonging, a very strong sense of community and sort of tribal sense in Benin. But then you're going to be moving on to these other levels. So I think, and I see in businesses that they say that there's the so-called generation, the baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, and now there's the millennials. Yeah. The millennials, their basic model is self-actualization. They say the millennials, the new workforce, does not see themselves working with one company for all their life, the rest of their life, because they don't want or need the security, the belonging. Yeah. They're actually more interested in this kind of self-actualization. So I have a feeling that you're going to be finding coaching has a great opportunity for expansion there, as long as the coaching itself is really geared towards this, tailored to the individual, and doesn't become locked into coaching is only this set of process and only this set of techniques and only this thing. Then you will it will meet a deadline.
Okay.
It will stop.
Okay. Interesting. Well, you have done a lot of research about NLP and coaching.
Yeah.
What do you think about mixing these two?
Yeah.
Mixing these two techniques.
Yeah. Well, I already said that there's reason that NLP and coaching, there's a lot of NLPs used in coaching. A lot of coaching, whether it's acknowledged or not, is basic NLP, right? You get an outcome, you get a well-formed outcome, you're finding resources, you're anchoring those resources. Any coach that doesn't do that is not a coach, right? You've got to have an outcome, you've got to find resources, so you've got to get rapport. So 90% of NLP is already completely fitting coaching. Now, on the other hand, NLP is not coaching, right? NLP is something different than coaching. Bandler and Grinder from the very beginning said the essence of NLP is modeling. And what modeling means is that you're always looking for something, somebody, a team, an organization, a person who is able to do something exceptional or remarkable, right? So NLP started by them modeling these exceptional psychotherapists. Bandler and Grinder were clear from the beginning, NLP is not a psychotherapy. We happen to be modeling psychotherapists, but the NLP is not the result of that particular modeling. NLP is an approach where you're looking at anything somebody does well, and you're asking, what's the difference that makes the difference? Right? Why is this person, this team, this organization able to succeed under the same conditions as everybody else, but the others are not succeeding as well as them, or they're failing? So NLP is not about, ultimately, the foundation of NLP is not about coaching, it's about modeling. And modeling then of course, can produce things that are very helpful for coaching, because you can model good coaching. You can say, well, here's an excellent coach. What are they doing? Just like they said, here's an excellent psychotherapist. What are they doing? I've said, I've used NLP for leadership. Well, there's some similarities in leadership and coaching, but they're different, right? But I still use NLP. I've used NLP to model innovation. I used NLP to model health and healing. So you can say that obviously NLP is not coaching, it's not leadership, it's not psychotherapy, it's not healing, it's not these things that you're modeling. It's the process of modeling. So in that sense, though, so in number one, some of the results of NLP can be very useful for coaches. But I also think that the process of modeling itself is probably something that a good coach needs to know, because I'm really trying to, in some sense, model what works for you, right? So an excellent modeler is somebody that can immediately be able to tell, well, when you do something well versus when you're struggling, what's the difference that makes the difference? How can we bring the focus there? So, I mean, personally, obviously, I'm completely biased, but I think that NLP, both the basic NLP skills, all the stuff that comes out of practitioner, master practitioner, is absolutely essential for a good coach. Okay. But I also think that the deeper NLP, which is this process of modeling, when you talk about the future of coaching, there is no future of coaching without this capacity for somehow modeling, right? Looking for what works, that continuing curiosity to try to structure. And then the other thing about, as we said, key to coaching, true coaching, is the adaptability to an individual, a unique individual. I adapt my method to that individual. I don't try to make that individual fit my model. So I think NLP is really, it's built for that kind of approach, right? To really be able to sense what is individual, what is unique, and how can I really fit something, in the best way to that person or that team, that organization.
The next one, let me read it because I'm listening to you.
Yeah, sure.
Ego and beliefs
Yeah.
are a part of every person. So how can a coach tries to remove all these mental concepts and to get his or her goals?
Well, I'm not sure that remove is the right word, because I think as soon as you try to remove, right, you are already beginning to not do coaching, So from the NLP perspective, the very first NLP book that Bandler and Grinder wrote, they said something, and it's the reason I got into NLP, because it was the most clear statement, and it was very revolutionary, and it made complete sense to me. They said in this book, The Structure of Magic, first they were looking at these therapies, and they said, the interesting thing is that all therapies work for some people. And they said that's very interesting. Even opposite things, this form of therapy and an opposite form, and they all work for some people. So they said, actually, rather than look at the therapy, let's look at what happens in the person when it works. And that's right. So that first switch, I think, is already what coaching is about. Mm-hmm. Don't look at the technique. It would be like saying you give somebody a placebo and they get better. You go, God, what is in that placebo that worked? It's not the placebo, right? What happens in that person when it works? And what they said, and this is why I'm responding to your question this way, that what you find in people when anything works for them is that they suddenly experience having more choices. And so this whole idea of the structure of magic was that we have our map of the world. That's what determines what we know how to do. And so you were talking about beliefs, and you're talking about, sort of these kinds of parts of our maps, right? A limiting belief. Well, they said it's not about taking away choices, right? It's not about getting rid of choices. They said, there's a very radical assumption, that if you add choices, true choices, and Adding a choice doesn't mean I just throw options at you, because that just overwhelms you. Adding choices means I really feel I have a choice. Then what happens is that you tend to automatically take the better choice. Now that choice has to truly be better, and this is again where you talk about the conscious sort of cognitive ego, right? The ego is going to be, it's a certain set of our programming, right? Beliefs are another set of our programming. The essential teaching of NLP is, sometimes I hear people say, oh, NLP means that you are your programming. I say, no, not at all. In fact, NLP is saying you are much, much more than your programming, right? Your programming influences you, it's there, but you are more than that. So the whole idea, when I'm coaching especially, right, is because removing things starts to become therapy, when I'm coaching and somebody has a limiting belief, I don't get all stuck in that belief and say, okay, now we've got to get rid of this limiting belief. It's as simple as saying, yes, that limiting belief is there, it's a program. You are much more than that. What other choices of beliefs could you have, right? If you start taking away a belief, you risk, right, because one of the other teachings of NLP is that everything is there. You developed it because it served a positive intention, it served a positive purpose. If I can add a choice that serves the same purpose and gives you greater flexibility, you will take it, right? It's not a matter. It's not a conscious decision in that sense. When it's truly a better choice, and this is what we learned from Erickson, people like Milton Erickson. He didn't work very much with conscious choice, right? But if somebody has a resource, if you add a resource, and suddenly I can do more, and it satisfies the same positive intention, I'm going to find myself doing it. So the other key is that what very often is what is happening is that these ego intentions, these conscious beliefs, are not for the whole being, they're for part of it. And Carl Jung used to say, he said the unconscious is always compensating, it's always trying to balance it for the biases or the prejudices of the conscious, right? So the ego has prejudices. I've got to do this, I need to make this happen in order to be this. And what you start finding is that these symptoms, this creates things where, like if somebody says, I have to put 100% in effort and I can never rest, guess what's going to happen? They're going to start having symptoms where, it's like I would use the metaphor, if I'm breathing out, I've got to breathe in eventually. So you're going to get this kind of balance. So now, coming back to your question, the first step for me of any coaching process is to bring greater awareness to the coachee of themselves, of their resources, of their programming, because if I'm not aware of it, I have no choice. Right? It just is. Right? If I'm not aware of it, it is. Just to give you an example, a very simple example, when I first started NLP and we were looking at, people make pictures and they talk to themselves and they have feelings. I was talking to this guy and he had a big problem, and I could see that he was talking to himself. And I said, it looks like you're talking to yourself about that. And he goes, talking to myself. No, I never talk to myself. I said, are you sure? Am I sure? Yeah. I said, but I mean, when I ask you a question, do you repeat the question to yourself before you answer it? He says, do I repeat your question before I answer it? Nope, I don't do that. Now, obviously, here's somebody who has no awareness of their own process. Right? No awareness of their own process. So if somebody's like that, what is my first job as a coach? If I try to change things, and basically I'm leaving that person in a state of, basically, they are no more than their program at that stage. But obviously, if I can bring awareness, right, the awareness creates something more than the program. And when this person, it was kind of like a life-changing experience to realize, that is an inner dialogue. I never knew that. Then instead of just that being the reality, because what you find is that people that are not aware of their programming is their reality. Most of the time when I work with people who have a belief, the first thing they say to me is they go, that's not a belief, that is reality. Right? Mm-hmm. So There's not even an awareness that, oh, this is my program. It is, no, that is how it is. It is that way. It's not a belief. So already right there, you begin to see that this huge, you're not taught in school to be aware of yourself. Right? You're programmed, right? You're given all the program, So self-awareness, again, if we talk about this movement towards self-actualization, it's got to start with a greater and greater awareness of myself, right? That's even what it said. What did it say on the entrance to the oracle at Delphi in ancient Greeks? Know yourself, right? Know yourself. So once I can be aware, then I can actually start having a choice. What does this belief produce? Right? I don't have to remove the belief. If I remove the belief, basically, I'm making a decision for my client that that is bad belief. It's supposed to say, that's a choice you can always have, right? You can always choose to believe that, and notice what happens. One of the things that I often do, once I have a client become aware of their belief, I do a process called tasting the poison. And the metaphor is, I'm not taking the whole thing, right? That's normally what happens, right? You're poisoned by it. But you taste it and you notice, when I start to think that, what happens in my body? What happens to my reality? Then I go, oh, if I have that belief, right, that neuro-linguistic program, it produces this kind of state, this kind of performance. Is that what I want? No, if my outcome is that, and it's taking me there. So I don't have to remove it. Okay, if I want to create that, that belief is there. But now, because you're much, much more than your belief, we say, what belief will lead you there? So instead of removing something, you do what I call building a belief bridge. And that bridge can go over the other one. And so now I go, well, am I going to take that road or this road? Well, I want to go there, I'm going to take that road. So you see, this is, to me, I think, and it goes back to even the notion of ethics, is that if you are a coach, your job is add choices for your client, not take them away. Okay. Right? Whatever you do, you're adding a choice. And so the whole idea of I've got to get rid of that, then you're no longer being a coach. You're being a therapist or something else. The ultimate goal of coaching is, there's the road, there's the goal. If this is an obstacle, okay, I either transform it, or I'm going to go, like I said, bridge around it, get another choice, and keep going.
Okay.